With a little more than 3 weeks left, as you know, in the presidential race.
And the race between Vice President Harris and former President Trump simply too close to call, with undecided voters playing a big role in who comes out on top.
All right, let's take a look at where we stand as of this Monday morning. You see the numbers right there, 48 to 48%. The boost in the polls after Harris launched her presidential campaign in the Democratic National Convention, that boost is now slipping away. This NBC News poll of likely voters reveals the contest is deadlocked at 48 points, with 4% of voters still undecided. So the fight, Dominique, is for those undecided voters.
Yes, and the campaigning, as you know, it is nonstop for the presidential nominees. This weekend, Mr. Trump targeted voters in Coachella, right in Vice President Harris's home state of California. And former President Bill Clinton courted voters in Georgia. He has more stops in this battleground state again today, and he's set to go on a bus tour through rural parts of North Carolina for Harris coming up this week.
Here with a look at where the race is with 22 days to go is Domonique James, former Obama campaign and White House liaison. Also with us to break things down this morning is former Speaker of the Oklahoma House of Representatives, T.W. Shannon. To both of you, thank you for joining us this morning. Dominique, I want to start with you. California, Vice President Harris's home state, of course, has voted blue solidly since 1992, in fact. Do you think former President Trump's efforts to campaign there, this is not the first time he's there, he's been there before, do you think his efforts could swing the vote similar to Georgia voting for President Biden in 2020?
Well, look, if California goes blue, I will be the first to come back on the show and say the world is probably ending. However, I do think what President or former President Trump did was very smart. More likely than not, he went to California to kind of drum up some margins in some of these really competitive congressional districts that will be key to either Republicans or Democrats winning the House in November.
All right, well, TW, aside from the Earth probably not ending, let's talk about battleground states and why this race is simply too close to call. Here is a recent New York Times Inquirer Siena survey of likely voters. Trump is leading in Arizona by 5 points. Harris has a 3-point edge in Pennsylvania. So what's it going to take for the candidates to essentially break through and get voters to show up in these swing states?
Yeah, and some later polling has Donald Trump even leading in Pennsylvania. So I think this is evident that the Kamala Harris campaign, they have absolutely hit the panic button. They are outspending Donald Trump in many battleground states 10-1. She had a 6-week honeymoon where basically she had nothing but positive press. She didn't have to answer one question from the press. Over $1 billion worth of free advertisements she received, and she's still either tied or behind in the battleground states. This is a problem for Kamala Harris, and it's 2020 all over again. The more voters get to know her, the less they like about her. And again, she has a really tough job as either running as an incumbent who can't really defend the record that she and Joe Biden created, allowing 21 million illegals into the country and facing some of the worst inflation that Americans have ever seen. She can't run on that record, so she tried to run as an outsider, but that just doesn't work because people know her. They remember her as a prosecutor. They remember her as the most liberal member of the United States Senate, but more importantly, they remember the failures of the Biden-Harris team, and Americans remember life was better under Donald Trump. Americans were more free, they were more safe, and they were more prosperous when Donald Trump was in the White House.
You know, this question is for both of you since we're talking about the voter base. Dominique, I want to hear your take on this first. We know Vice President Kamala Harris clearly has a problem with black male voters. She's also lost a lot of Hispanic voters and young men. So this week, she's actually planning to roll out several policies. We're hearing that these policies will target specifically black men. Will this have an impact? And TW, is this going to have an impact in your opinion too? So let's go to Dominique, you first, and then TW, we'll hear from you.
Well, first of all, there is a very clear gender divide in this election, and I do want to be honest and transparent about that. I also think what Vice President Harris is doing is incredibly smart, and I absolutely support it. She is focused on building an opportunity economy, and she absolutely should spend time with men who feel like they have been left behind or that they're being overshadowed in a lot of these political conversations. I will also quickly add, I listened to former President Obama's comments to Black men. It was a family conversation, but I will be honest, there is a little bit of sexism going on in this election cycle. It is not the be all end all. No one should vote for any candidate because of the color of their skin or their race or their gender. However, I've sat in these focus groups, I've seen the polling, and people are literally doing pretzels trying to figure out ways to disqualify Harris in their own mind. So he was right to call it out. And again, with Black men in particular, he, as another Black man, could have this really important, intimate conversation that I think is getting a little construed, but should absolutely be addressed.
Dominique, with all due respect, I appreciate your perspective, but the reality is, as a Black man, I was enormously offended by President Obama's comments. Number one, there are a lot of reasons to dislike Kamala Harris that have nothing to do with her gender and has nothing to do with her race, but it's all about the policies that she's inflicted upon people that look like me. Whether we're talking about her record on locking up Black men on marijuana charges when she was the prosecutor in the state of California, or we're talking about the way that she's allowed 21 million illegals to come into our country that's created a crime crisis. This is all a result of Kamala Harris's policies, not her gender. So I reject the idea that somehow Black men can't make up their minds about Kamala Harris because of her gender. We love Black women. The problem is, it's just not this Black woman that we want in the White House. The real challenge is she's the most radical United States senator in the history of the United States Senate. She's more to the left of Bernie Sanders. And this is a problem because we've seen how the policies have failed, not just Black Americans, but all Americans. And so this idea that Obama is going to create the narrative that he wants to blame Black men for Kamala Harris' failures, not only is it offensive, but it's just downright wrong.
TW, please explain to me what is so radical about trying to have affordable housing. Please help me understand, and this is actually something very personal to me right now. Vice President Harris just introduced a plan to have in-home care provided by Medicare. That's something that I'm going through right now. Please help me understand what is so radical about caregiving, what is so radical about childcare, what is so radical about affordable housing, stopping this price gouging that's going on with our rents, with our homes. Please help me understand what is so radical about not being price gouged with the price of groceries, which corporations are doing. There's so much information going on right now. What is radical about women making decisions about their bodies and getting the healthcare that they need? There's nothing radical. There's a lot of misinformation going on.
What's radical is creating the highest inflation that we've seen in 2 generations because of the failed policies of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. What's radical is she's rolling out these great ideas in her mind in the 11th hour of the campaign to appeal to Black voters, but Black men are standing around asking the question, where have you been the last 4 years? If you really cared about the issues that are affecting the country, why haven't you done something? And let me tell you what's the most radical is allowing 21 million illegal people, many of them, 13,000 of them, released for murder charges in their home countries. That's what's radical. It's dangerous, and it's frankly un-American to allow 21 million people to come into this country illegally, as the borders are, and to stand up now in the 11th hour of the campaign to claim to have a plan for Black Americans. If it was so great, why hasn't she done it in the last 4 years? That's the question that I'd like her or you to answer, Dominique. Where has she been for the last 4 years?
So this is one more point of confusion that I see on the Republican side. You all may be a little confused about the actual roles and powers of a vice president, and that's understandable because a mob tried to kill Vice President Pence, and that's why J.D. Vance is the vice presidential nominee. The vice president helps serve and enact the agenda of the president, who at this point is Joe Biden. Kamala Harris is forging a path for her own. She's talking about how we need to turn the page from all this divisiveness of the Trump years. She's talking about how we need to turn the page and move forward. And with these policies about building an opportunity economy, protecting and saving women's rights, again, cutting taxes, affordable housing, lifting up our economy from the bottom and from the middle instead of from the top down. That's the clear choice that all Americans, especially Black Americans and Black men, have this upcoming election in just 20 some odd days.
Dominique, at the fear of mansplaining to you, because I certainly don't want to do that. I think you're an intelligent woman who can stand on her own 2 feet with her own ideas. But the reality is the vice president is the last voice that the president hears on any decision that he makes. So any decision that's been made, any turn of the page that Kamala Harris wants to enact, she's turning the page from the very policies that she helped to enact. She cast the final deciding vote in the United States Senate on the radical Build Back Better plan that created the inflation that we see, over $1.9 trillion that was wasted, that has cost American families, Black families particularly, an increasing amount of their hard-earned money. So, yeah, we need to turn the page, but we need to turn the page from Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, because, again, she can't run from the record that is her and Joe Biden. The American people in 2020 voted for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden to lead this country. That's who's been leading it, and she can't run from that, not because she's a woman, not because she's a Black or Indian woman, but because the American thing to do is to stand up and own your own record, which she has failed to do.
Well, TW and Dominique, I mean, this is a conversation. We could fill a whole hour having these debates and conversations. And we're grateful for intelligent, spirited debate on both sides. So we appreciate both of you for being with us here on Morning on Merit. There's so much to look out for. We appreciate your insights. We would love to have you back as we narrow in on this presidential race, which is within the 3-week mark. So thank you again.
Thank you. So important to have civil discourse.
Yes, it is.
Civil discourse this morning. We appreciate that so much. Well, coming up, a once in a